Good afternoon, everyone. Can we quickly just get a sound check in the chat? Can someone just say, can everyone hear me? Okay, perfect. Guys, welcome to the Accentronix training session. For the duration of the session, everyone will be muted. That's just to stop this from sounding like a South African parliament. What we are going to cover today is mostly our products. Most of you will be familiar with most of them. But we're also going to cover the major differences between the LTE devices and the GSM devices. There's also a demonstration at the end of this presentation where we will show you how it works when two devices are linked to one another. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat while the session is active. We do have an additional technician on standby to answer those questions. And then at the end, if we have missed any of the questions, I'll just run through them again and we can see if we can answer most of all of your questions. Hopefully at the end of the session, everyone will have a better understanding of how the system works, as well as how the LTE and the GSM system differs. Okay, so like I said, most of you should know all the products really well, but we are going to cover everything. We are going to run through everything, and we will also be doing the portal itself. So some of you might see new settings that you did not know existed on the system. Some of you maybe learn a thing or two about remotes or tags or anything else. Yeah, so let's get started. Okay, so our system gets installed inside a gate motor at let's say a security estate. You can then control that device with your cell phone using missed call or the Accentronix Smart Home app. Our new LTE devices do have Bluetooth backup. We'll go into a bit more detail about that later on. All our new devices works with the LTE network, whereas our previous devices worked with the GSM 2G network. Okay, our system allows you to manage users, remotes, and tags from the cloud. You have visitor one-time PIN functionality with all of our devices. You can bulk learn remotes and tags on all of our devices. And they all have advanced access control logs. Okay, so let's check the two new devices, or not new devices, but the two new models of the devices. So first, we've got the Cell Switch Infinity LTE model. Very important to note, a big difference between the old units and the new LTE units is that the new LTE unit only has a single SIM card. Old units used to have dual SIM, new units single SIM only. The device itself has 2 outputs and 4 inputs, so you can control 2 things and monitor 4 other things. It's got an external antenna that comes with a 2-meter cable. And also a very big difference between the old units and the new units is all new LTE cell switches has a built-in receiver for remotes. So no need to add that on. All of them have a built-in receiver. The Cell Switch Infinity also works with the tag reader, and it also has the Bluetooth backup with the app. All our units can take 12 to 24 volt DC. Okay, moving on to the Cell Switch Nano LTE. As always, it's still a single SIM unit. It has 2 outputs and 2 inputs. It's got an integrated antenna, and it can use the tag reader system. And also, like the previous one, the LTE Nano has a built-in receiver. So you don't have to connect an external receiver on them. If, however, you do connect these units on a specific site where you see there's some interference on the receiver, the internal receiver, you can add an external receiver to the system. That will still work. Okay, Nano also works with 12 to 24 volt DC. Both of them work with the LTE network. A bit more information about LTE itself. So the old units used to work with 2G. And what we have seen is that during load shedding, 2G is the first frequency that gets dropped from the towers. So during load shedding, most likely, if you have a 2G device installed, it will lose network connection. LTE in most areas will still be there. It will be a bit not as strong as it is not during load shedding, but you will still have LTE connection because it uses the same frequency that most cell phones use. Okay, moving on to our intercom systems. So we used to have 4 models. It's still exactly the same. We still have the intercom complex, intercom 2-button, intercom mini, and intercom index. So all of them do exactly the same when it comes to features and what they are capable of. The main difference is the intercom 2-button. All other intercoms, you can call up to 10,000 users from the system. But with the intercom 2-button, you can only call 2 people from the system. Okay. Note that you can still load up to 10,000 access control users on that 2-button, but it can only phone to 2 cell phones. Our intercoms do have a failover option. So let's say you have a cell phone number connected to button 1. You can add a secondary number to that same button. So if you call the first number and it doesn't go through, it will automatically call the second number connected to that button. However, we have seen there are some networks and some areas where it does not allow this to happen. And a symptom that this can cause is when you phone the first number, it will only ring twice and automatically go to the secondary number. Easy fix for this is just put the secondary number also as a primary number. Okay. So the way our intercom systems works, it calls directly to your mobile phone. You answer that call, and you can then decide to open that gate. If you press 1, output 1 will trigger, 2, output 2 will trigger, 3, output 3 will trigger. Okay. With all of them, you can manage 10,000 users, remotes, and tags. All of them do have the visitor one-time PIN functionality. And what makes our intercom systems unique is if you do have an OTP, that PIN can be used directly on the intercom itself. You don't need an external keypad. You can use that PIN directly on the keypad of the intercom. Okay, very big difference between the old intercoms and the new intercoms. Old intercoms was dual SIM. All new intercoms are single SIM only. And the reason for this is the way that LTE technology works. It's very hard for a SIM card to basically swap over from one SIM to another. And if that was possible on the LTE technology, the device itself would be much more expensive. Okay, so all of them still have a receiver built in, so remotes can directly connect to the intercom. And they have all 3 outputs and 2 inputs. As well as with the cell switch LTE units, these also have Bluetooth backup when using the app. Okay, something new about intercom systems is the security bracket. So the security bracket of the device is specifically designed to safeguard the SIM card from unauthorized removal. It is constructed from high-quality stainless steel and includes a locking mechanism to enhance security. With this bracket in place, it becomes much more challenging for anyone without proper authorization to remove the SIM card from the device. And this will be standard on all complex and index models. So complex and index models will come standard with this. Okay, so let's have a look at a few add-on products. So with the old GSM devices, to use remotes, you simply connect a receiver to them. But with all new LTE devices, the receiver's already built in. This allows you to manage your remote directly on our system. And it will also give you log reports every time someone uses that remote. Okay, the wireless keypad. The keypad itself connects through the receiver, and it enables the use of the OTP system. Like I said, you can use the OTP system directly on your intercom system's keypad, but say you have an exit gate, you can connect one of these to the intercom, and then you can use that codes for going in as well as for going out. They do have a range of about 15 meters. We have found some sites to have interference that can reduce this range. What you can do is to remove the antenna of the actual keypad itself, and that should extend your range by quite a bit. Then we do have our personal wired keypad. Works exactly the same as the wireless, except it's wired and your maximum range is 100 meters. And it also has a backlight, so perfect for dark spots at exit gates. Then we have our tag system. Our tag system can connect to any one of our devices, and it basically works exactly the same as remotes. So remotes can be programmed on the system, and you can also restrict those tags. We'll get into a bit more detail, but basically works exactly the same as remotes. Every time someone uses that tag, it will give you a detailed log report. Okay, a bit more detail about the remotes itself. You can easily pre-register remotes off site. So say you've got a site 20 kilometers away, you have a bunch of remotes you want to learn on that site. You don't have to be close to that site. All you need is another device inside your office with a receiver. You can then use the device in your office as a gateway to learn that remote to the device on site. I'll show you a bit later on how this can be done. With the remotes, you can restrict the remote to only work for specific days and times, and as well as only for specific users. You get a detailed log report of every time someone uses that remote. And like we said, all LTE devices has a built-in receiver. GSM devices with the dual SIM cards, you can connect an external receiver and you can still use the remote. We do get the question quite often, if you have a cell switch 100 or Intercom 1000, that's one of the very first models, they do not support remotes at all. So you won't be able to connect a receiver to them to use the remotes. Okay, our tag system works exactly the same as our remotes. You can, however, with our system, link multiple devices over the server or over the cloud. Basically, what this means is, say you've got one device at your entrance gate and a second device at your exit gate, and they are 200 meters apart. You can link your second device to your first device over the cloud. That will be in the live demonstration later on. And basically what that means is every time you make a change on your master device, that same change will take effect on your slave device. Okay, very important to note during load shedding that even if your device loses network connectivity, network connection, your remotes and tags will still work because they are not network dependent. They will still work 100%. You won't while the device itself has no connection, though, you won't be able to learn new remotes or new tags, but all the current remotes and tags will still work. Okay, tags can also then be restricted to only work on specific days, times, or for specific users on specific outputs. So that can be done. Like with the remotes, you can pre-register a lot of tags off-site. All you would need is another device with a tag reader connected at your office, and you can use that as a gateway to learn tags to the one on site. So that can be done. Just an example of your typical security estate. So you've got an intercom system installed at your entrance gate, a cell switch infinity at your exit gate, and then a nano at your pedestrian gate and a nano on your swimming pool. So the tenants will gain entry to the entrance gate via remote or via their cell phone, and they can use that same remote on the exit gate, as well as they can use the app with the Bluetooth function for both of them. Then our tag will work basically on pedestrian gate at any time, but will only work from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. on our swimming pool. Okay, so this is just an example of your typical setup, but as you see that all of these devices are linked to each other, and your intercom will be your master device. Now, when it comes to linking devices, be aware that you cannot link an intercom to a cell switch, but you can link a cell switch to an intercom. So your intercom will always be your master device. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so as soon as someone is added on the system will automatically send them a free welcome SMS, which contains instructions on how to use the system, as well as a link on where to download the Accentronix Smart Home app. As soon as they have registered on the app, they enter their own cell phone number. The system will automatically pick up that their number has been loaded on one of the devices, and that device's buttons will automatically appear for them. Okay. Bit more about the one-time PIN. So residents can use the Accentronix Smart Home app to invite visitors. The question we do get a lot is that the only way to send an OTP? Yes. So the app is the only way that you can send an OTP. You basically can't send a one-time PIN using SMSs. It will only work with the Accentronix Smart Home app. The tenant can then choose, do they want to send that PIN over WhatsApp or SMS? And when they do, the visitor will receive a Google Maps link as well as instructions on how to use that PIN. Then, as soon as the visitor has used that PIN, the resident will receive a notification saying that the PIN has been used by their visitor. Okay. Admins of the devices can allow residents to send one PIN that's valid for once in, once out, or it can be valid for the whole day with a cut-off time. So say the resident put the cutoff time 5 o'clock, that PIN will automatically expire 5 o'clock. Okay, then moving to the intercom systems. Our intercom system has a automatic exit OTP feature. The way this works is basically that, say someone your visitor gets to the gate, they press your button number, it calls your cell phone, and you open the gate by pressing 1. The system will then automatically send an OTP to your cell phone, which you give to your visitor. Your visitor uses that PIN on the way out. Okay, so perfect examples for this is if you are receiving a delivery. Delivery guy gets to the gate, calls you, you open, you automatically get a PIN. When he delivers the item, you give him that PIN, he uses that PIN on his way out, and you will get a notification saying that the PIN has been used. Okay, so that covers OTPs. I'm going to show you a quick example of how it looks. So you'll see on the left-hand side, you can select a person from your contact list, or you can enter new details. And then you can also select, is that PIN valid for the whole day or limited to one entry and one exit only? In the middle, we've got an example of what it would look like if that visitor gets that message. And then on the right-hand side is just an example of what notifications on the app would look like. Okay, we've also added a new feature that was requested by a lot of people. And basically, that's the multiple day OTPs. The way this works is the admin of the device can now allow multiple day OTPs to be sent. These OTPs can be generated to remain active for the desired number of days, making them particularly useful for guest houses or any other scenario where longer term access is needed. So this is something that they can just tick or decide on the portal, how many days max can they send a OTP, and it will no longer expire 12 o'clock at night. Okay. Bit more about the Bluetooth function using the app. If the device installed is an LTE device, the Accentronix app will have a backup option that uses Bluetooth. If you press a button to open the gate, the app will first attempt to use the Bluetooth for the operation. And if you are not within Bluetooth range, the app will then switch to using the network. This happens instantly, so nothing has to be done on your side. And it's also important to keep in mind that this function will only be available on LTE devices. There's also no need for the user to connect or pair with the Bluetooth of the gate, as this all happens automatically once their number is loaded on the system. So once they have installed the app, they have to make sure that the app will actually ask them for permissions. They can just allow all. That's just basically allowing the app to use the Bluetooth for this function. Okay, a very, very important part for installers. Basically, there's a few things to keep in mind when installing an LTE device. What we have found is that LTE devices do have a tendency to be a bit more susceptible to interference. So to mitigate the interference caused by high power LTE transmissions on the PCB's LTE and Bluetooth radios, it's advised to mount the antenna and the bracket located on the intercom side and leave the remaining coiled up wire outside the enclosure. The coiled up wire generates a strong magnetic field during transmission, which can affect the radio sensitivity. It is recommended to push down the excess wire through the gooseneck to ensure proper installation. So very important, if you install a device, do not let the antenna be coiled up close to the device itself, because that magnetic field will actually cause interference, and you'll see on the logs of your device, it will constantly reboot, and this is the way to fix it. Okay, use of high gain antenna. What we have found is with the LTE devices, even if the signal in that area is very low, LTE still works perfectly fine. It's much, much, much more stable than the 2G network. So with the use of high gain antenna, reception on the LTE devices is exceptionally well, even with a low signal strength. The stronger antenna could cause even more interference depending on the surrounding area. So say there's an electric fence close to the high gain antenna, it will actually cause massive interference and your device will be more offline than it's actually online. So we do recommend just use the normal antenna that came with the device itself, even if you are replacing an older model that used a high gain antenna. Okay, regarding load shedding. During load shedding, network strength of all cell phone towers may be affected in certain areas, which could cause some devices to disconnect temporarily. However, devices equipped with backup batteries will still function with all remotes and tags. Additionally, if the device installed is an LTE device, you can also use the Bluetooth function on the app to gain access. So remotes, tags, and Bluetooth function is not network dependent. So if it's load shedding, you have backup battery, but the network in the area is down, those should still be working 100% fine. Okay, another very, very important concept when it comes to the new LTE devices is a setting called voice over LTE on the SIM card. So what does this mean? All new prepaid SIM cards are LTE, because that's what most cell phones use. However, VoLTE is a different setting on its own. VoLTE stands for voice over LTE. So let's say you have a LTE SIM card in your cell phone and you make a call. When you make a call, the cell phone will automatically switch back to 2G to make that call. But if voice over LTE is activated on that cell phone, it will use the LTE network to make that call. Now, our devices do need VoLTE to be active on the SIM card, or you cannot make any calls to it. Okay, so what does this mean? Basically, all our SIM cards we provide with our products, the settings already activated. However, if you go back to, so say you are replacing an old device with a new device and you want to use the same SIM, you will have to contact the network provider and ask them to activate voice over LTE. This can take a few days to activate, and sometimes it does not even activate. So the best advice is to just use the SIM card that came with the device itself. Okay, so that's voice over LTE. Okay, so presentation on the portal itself. So you will see that currently we do have 2 devices installed on this profile. So entrance gate LTE intercom, as well as a cell switch Infinity at the exit gate. So here's the scenario: our intercom's installed at our entrance gate, and our cell switch is 200 meters away at the exit gate. Okay, so let's just go through all the settings on the intercoms first. Okay, as soon as you select your device, you will be taken to your access control list. Very self-explanatory. This is where you add and remove numbers who can gain access on that specific device. Okay, I'll show you later on how to add someone, but we're moving on, and you'll see that next to access control users, we get restricted users. Works exactly the same. You enter the name and number of the person, but on this page, you can restrict them to certain days or certain times or a certain output. Okay, so next to that, we've got welcome SMS. So like we said, if your number gets added to the system, you automatically receive a welcome SMS. This will be set up by default, but this is where you can change that message. So on the right is an example of what will be sent, and on the left is where you can actually edit that message. Okay, the last option on this page is linked devices. We will get back to this as we are going to use it later on. On the left, we can see we are currently selected users. Underneath users, we've got remotes, tags, and keypads. So all settings regarding remotes, tags, and keypads can be set here. And the first one we have is remotes. Now, for this specific intercom that I'm using at the moment, we have a tag reader connected. And like I said earlier, tags and remotes cannot be used on the same device, but there is a workaround, which I'll show you later on. So this intercom system has a tag system connected. So we have disabled the built-in receiver. Please be aware, if you, however, enable this, it will clash with the receiver, as both the receiver and the tag reader uses the same data port on the intercom. Okay, moving on to tags, we can see that our tag reader is enabled. Okay, and then if we go to keypads, anything OTP related or keypad related, you can find here. So let's say on this intercom, we are not using the tag reader. We want to use remotes as well as keypads. If we want to learn a wireless keypad, this is where this will happen. So if we click on manage wireless keypads, we can simply click on learn keypad, and it will give us 20 seconds to press 0 5 times on that keypad. Be aware, however, you need to be in range of the intercom for that keypad to pick up the receiver, or the receiver to pick up the keypad, and then that keypad will be learned on the system, and you can tell it exactly which output should trigger when someone uses a code. Okay, something a lot of people do get confused about our system is which output triggers when you use a OTP. To put it very simply, the OTP does not matter. It's the keypad you use that matters. For an example, we can see the first option here, enable global access code. Global access code is a code that anyone can use on the system, and the gate will open. For example, we're going to enable it and choose the code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if someone gets to the intercom itself, or they have a wireless keypad connected to the intercom, or a wired keypad connected to the intercom, if they type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the gate will open. So if this code is used directly on the keypad of the intercom, So not on a wireless keypad or a wired keypad, but directly on the intercom. This output here is the one that will get triggered. So if this code, say you've got a wireless keypad connected to your intercom, and that wireless keypad is set to trigger output 2, if you use this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on that wireless keypad, output 2 will trigger. But if we use it directly on the intercom, output 1 will trigger. And that's because we have set the intercom's keypad to always trigger output 1 when a code is used. And here we can change that. Yeah, so just something to keep in mind for the OTPs. The OTP itself does not matter. It's the keypad that decides which output gets triggered. Next option we have is enable reverse access code. Way this works is each person loaded on the system can use the last 4 digits of their cell phone number in reverse as their code. Now, we get a lot of complaints saying that what happens if there are 2 people in the complex with the same last 4 digits? Well, they're very lucky because that's like winning the lotto. It won't ever happen. We've never seen it, and the probability of that happening is very, very scarce. So yeah, don't worry about that. But when this is enabled, the person can use star and the last 4 digits of their cell phone number in reverse, and that's their personal code. Now, very big difference between the global code and the reverse code. If the global code gets used, you won't be able to see on the log who used it because it's a global code. If you use the reverse code, however, whoever number ends with those last 4 digits, that's the one that gets logged. So you can see exactly who used the code. Okay. Then the third option is allow residents to invite visitors by sending them an OTP with the Accentronix Smart Home app. This is basically where you can enable or disable the OTP function from the app. You can also from here select allow users to create single use and whole day access OTPs, or you can only allow them to have single OTPs. Okay, the new feature we explained earlier for the multiple days, this is where that multiple days can be set. So by default, it will always be on 1, but let's say the people of this complex, we want to have or be able to send pins that are valid for more than 8 days. This is where we can basically set that. And then the last option we have is send an exit OTP after each intercom call. That's just the setting we explained earlier, where the intercom will automatically send you a pin after each call. Okay, so that's everything regarding OTPs. Now, another option that you have on the left, you'll see underneath remote stacks and keypads, gate timers. A lot of people still don't know about this feature, but it's definitely available and you can use it. So the way it works is you can set a day and time for each, or a time for each day where the gate will automatically open and automatically close. So let's say Monday, we want the gate to automatically open at 7 o'clock and then close automatically 8:30. The gate will then open again at 12 o'clock and close, let's say 1 o'clock. On the right, we can then also select to load all public holidays. It will automatically pull in all public holidays from the internet, and those timers won't take effect on those days. You can also click on each individual day, and those timers won't take effect. Okay. So just a quick overview of the timers themselves. I think it's very self-explanatory. On the left, the next we have is configuration. So this is more for your installers. But first thing we have is general setup. In general setup, you can see some general information like the name of the device can also be changed here, when the device was registered, and when the subscription is due. Subscription we will also cover later on. Next to info, we've got audio settings. So from here, we can select the max call duration of that intercom. And this is just to stop anyone from talking on the intercom for 30 to 40 minutes. So after 55 seconds, it will cut off that call. From here, you can also remotely set the speaker volume and the microphone volume. Okay, then you'll see there's a last option here called custom features. We'll come back to that in a minute. Moving on to notifications. Anything notifications related can be changed here. For example, let's say send an alert when the battery voltage drops below 10.5 volts. At the top, we also have email report settings. So the admin of the device can decide to send a log report daily, weekly, monthly, and then you can enter 2 email addresses where those logs are sent. Okay, so at the bottom here, a thing that a lot of people miss is send an email when the device has been offline for more than a couple of hours. Please note and always activate this on your device, because if a device goes offline and it's been offline for some time, there is a chance for the SIM card to expire. Even if the device is still working, there might be another problem why it's not connecting to our server, and we cannot load airtime if it's a cell switch, and the SIM card of that device will actually expire. So always keep this activated. Okay, next we have inputs and outputs. So when an input on our device gets triggered, this is just a page where you can change the message that gets sent. For example, if input 1 receives a 12 to 24 volt high, it will send that message. If that 12 to 24 volt goes away, it will send the bottom message. Okay, input trigger delay. Input trigger delay only means that the 12 or 24 volt high will have to be there for more than 30 seconds before it will send you a notification. This can be changed. So let's say we want a notifications immediately, we can change it to 1 or 0 seconds. Same can then be also done with input 2. Okay, moving to output options. A few changes that you can make for your outputs. For example, let's say when a missed call is received on SIM1, should that output toggle? So should it latch? And then you have to call it again to unlatch, or will it only switch on for 1 second? So more for your installers, they'll know exactly what this means and why to change this or when to change this. And at the bottom here, you'll just see your confirmation messages. Again, a lot of people do get confused when they do use the app. They get a pop-up message that says gate opened or gate controlled. That does not mean the gate that actually opened. It only means that the command from our device has gone through. So we'll see if the device pulses. That's what usual app, if you press the app button, that's the usual thing that happens. The device pulses output 1. That's the confirmation message that you will receive. Entrance gate control. This can be changed. But like I said, please note, it does not mean the gate opened. It only means that the pulse has gone through from our device. So let's say the gate mode itself is faulty. You press the button, it says entrance gate control, but the gate's not opening. It just means the pulse went through from our device, but there's a problem somewhere else, likely with the gate motor. Okay, then on the left, last, we've got app buttons. Okay, so this might seem complicated, but it's actually very straightforward as soon as you understand it. So let's dive in. You'll see that currently by default, there's 3 buttons set up: entrance, exit, pedestrian. Next to them, there's a command. You will then also see that 2 of those buttons are hidden. So how does the commands work? On the right-hand side, you'll see we've got output 1, output 2, and output 3. Then we've also got on command, off command, and pulse command. Basically, we can see this command here, if we press the button, is control. So what does that do? Well, output 1, pulse command is set to control. So what will happen if we press that? Output 1 will pulse. Okay, let's say we want to change this button to keep the gate open when pressed. Well, we know that output 1's on command is open. So all we do is change the command for that specific button to open. Now, when someone presses that button, it will keep the gate open. Let's say we want to change this one to close. We unhide that button, and we know that output 1 off command is close. And we change that to close. Now, when someone presses that button, the gate will open and stay open. And when they press the second button, it will close or unlatch that output again. And this does not have to be these commands that's here. You can do it manually. So if we say pulse, we can change this to pulse as well. Okay, so that's our buttons. Very easy to basically change and edit them. And you can have as much as you like. So no limit there. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we are going to link our cell switch to our intercom system, because we basically want the exit gate to work with the entrance gate. We're going to go back to our device list. And we can see the second device here is exit gate cell switch LTE. Okay, currently the access control list for our cell switch is empty, which is perfect because we are not going to do any program on the cell switch itself. Once you have linked a device to another device, the slave device does not really matter because all settings and people get added on the master device. How do we do this? Okay, so if we have a look here, we missed this earlier, so we go to linked devices. And we can see this current cell switch is set as its own master device. We can now select it as a slave device, and it will give you the option to select your master device. From here, we can see Intercom Infinity LTE. This is our entrance gate. We want this to be our master device. So we're just going to click on link. Okay. Now, if we go back to access control, you'll see this device has been linked to another device. So you don't add anyone on the specific device, you add someone on the master device, and it will automatically work on the slave device. Very important to note is that when you do make any changes on the system, afterwards click on Save Settings, and then Update Device. This just sends any new information you have changed here to our server and to our database, and it basically just links those two. If you, however, forget to click on Update Device, clicking on Save Settings will automatically update the device after 15 minutes. Okay, now we also want our tag reader to work on our slave device. So we've got a tag reader connected to our intercom, and we've also got another tag reader connected to our cell switch. So just to make sure, we go to remote tags and keypads. We can see the built-in receivers disabled, which is perfect. And the tag reader is enabled, which is perfect. Okay, so now we're going to save set and update device. And then another thing you will notice with our new LTE devices is that with the GSM devices, if you click on update, it takes a while. You'll also notice that the LTE devices much more faster. So another important thing to note is that when you do an update on a device, do not test it immediately as the device reboots, and that can take a minute or two. LTE devices much faster than GSM ones. It's just something to keep in mind. Okay, we're going back to our device list, and we are going to select our master device, which is the intercom. Okay, so now we want to add a user, but we also want to learn a tag on that user. But this specific tag should work on the exit gate as well. So how do we do that? Well, let's first enter the person's name, cell phone number. If you want to use that secondary number, this is where we enter it. House is just for you to keep reference. And button number is the actual button number that's going to have to be pressed on the intercom to call this cell phone number. Okay, this is specific user has access ticked, so they can gain access, and they also have the button enabled. So if you want someone not to be able to receive calls, you can just disable this tick box. Now we click on add. And the system will say, welcome message sent. Okay. Now we also want to, like we said, use a tag on the specific person. And the way we do this is you'll see two icons next to his name. So we've got the remote icon if you want to learn a remote, or we've got the tag icon. Clicking on the tag icon, it takes you to the screen and you'll see at the top our gateway. Gateway is very important. Gateway is the device you are going to use or scan the tag to learn the tag on this device. So let's, for example, say we are currently not at the entrance gate, but we are at the cell switch. So we want to use the cell switch to learn those tags on the master device. We can select the gateway as the cell switch. That means that when we click on quick learn tag, the tag is going to have to be scanned on the cell switches tag system and not the intercom. So that's the same way that you will basically, let's say the intercom system is 20 kilometers away at site, but the cell switch is at your office. You can use the cell switch to learn that tag on the intercom. So that is what the gateway means. Okay, for this exercise, we are going to use the intercom. So let's just say quick learn tag. It will now give us 20 seconds to scan that tag. And it will then show you the serial number that's on the back of the tag, as well as here you can change the name of that tag. This is just for you to keep reference. It does not really matter. Now, so if this tag is now scanned at the intercom, it will open the output of the intercom. But we also want this specific tag to work on the exit gate. So how do we do this? You'll see next to there's an option link. So with our system regarding remotes as well as tags, you only have to learn a remote or tag once. Thereafter, if you click on this link option, it will use that same tag, but it will ask you the name as well as device to control. Now, remember, we've got the LTE cell switch connected as a slave. So if we click here, it will then give us the option to control the slave. And then we can just basically click on link the tag. So yeah, that's basically, you can give the reference then say exit and entrance. And then click on save. When you do, however, want to remove a tag, you will see this question: confirm, delete, and move tag to unassigned. Okay, so I'm going to show you exactly how the pre-register or unassigned tags work. But for this exercise, we are not going to move it to unassigned. Okay, so this person will now have a tag that will work on the intercom as well as on the exit cell switch. Now, it works exactly the same way with the remotes. So if we had to go to, if the receiver was enabled and we go to the remote section, we can quick learn a remote. And then we can just click link next to that remote and choose, say, button 2, device to control, exit cell switch. So it will work exactly the same. Okay, if you go to remote tags and keypads, you'll see at the top here, manage pre-registered remotes or manage pre-registered tags. So how does this work? Let's say the body corporate buys 200 remotes or 200 tags, but they don't know who they are going to give those remotes or tags to. What they can do is they can pre-register the tags on the system. So on the pre-registered page, we are going to learn a new tag. That tag will now be on the system, but it will not work on the system. So if that tag gets scanned, it will not open anything. We can now see that on our manage pre-registered tags, we have one tag. Now, if we go back to users and we have a new tenant that just moved in and we want to assign that serial number that we can see on the back of the tag to a name or his name, we can just go to the tag icon again, and you'll see at top, link a pre-registered tag. And there's the tag that we have just learned on the system. Can now link that tag with the person's name. And we see the serial number, and we can change this to entrance. And then we can do exactly the same where we link that tag again for the exit gate. Okay, so that's how easy it is to work with multiple devices being linked to each other and learning remotes and tags to them. Okay, so something we went or skipped earlier is the custom features settings. Okay, going back to configuration, general setup, you'll see the last option here is custom features. So our intercom system has a few things it can do under custom features. For example, only allow control while in close proximity of the device itself. What this means is that missed calls and app control will be disabled for that device. Only remotes, tags, and the backup Bluetooth will work. So Bluetooth will only work while you are within 30 meters. And this is just a way to basically make sure that no one opens your gate from overseas or wherever they are. They have to be close to the device for it to actually open the gate. Okay, next we have guardhouse feature. So by default, if a tenant or resident calls this number of the intercom and they are on the access control list, the gate will open. When guardhouse feature is enabled and someone on the list calls this number, the intercom will ring like a normal cell phone and the guard can answer by pressing any button. So that's two-way communication with the guardhouse. The guard can then still open the gate from his side, but yeah, that option is there for guardhouse feature. Next, we've got enable exit button on input 1. All this does is that when input 1 receives a 12 or 24 volt high, it will pulse the output 1. So perfect example, you've got a access control system with a lot of guests coming in and out. You have a push button at the exit. If this is enabled, you connect your button to input 1. When someone presses that button, the gate will open. Our intercom system also has the automatic PABX selection option. Way this works, a perfect example is if you call our office, it will ask you to press 1 for technical, 2 for subscriptions, and 3 for admin. What the system can do and what the setting can do is basically you can set it up that when you press, let's say for an example, the office number on the intercom is 111, the phone will ring, it will ask you 1 for technical, 2 for subscriptions, 3 for admin. You can manually enter it. You can manually choose after the call has been made by pressing 1, 2, or 3 on the intercom. Or you can set it up where it will always go to a specific option. So as you'll see, it will give you instructions if you hover over it, how to do this. But basically, if you press 1 and we have set it up, it will always go to option 1, which is technical. If you set it up for 2, it will always go to subscription and so on. This can be done. Okay, we have covered the gate timers earlier, where the gate will automatically open and close. So if your timers are active and say 8 o'clock in the morning, the timer should go on, 12 o'clock, it should go off. But 10 o'clock, which is between those times, someone calls the gate will then actually close. This is for, let's say, an emergency, the gate has to close now. If someone calls it while the timer is active, gate will close. Choosing this option will just ignore all commands while those timers are active. So if someone calls it, it will not close. It will still be open for the remainder of those settings. Only way to then close it is by going onto the system and changing the times. Okay, like we mentioned earlier, is if you do have you use a system with an internal receiver, but there's a lot of interference in that area, you can connect an external receiver, and then this setting just has to be selected, which disables the internal RX micro receiver. Okay, so that's just basically some custom features that the intercom system can do. we have had some multiple requests for specific features on specific devices, and that's what this custom feature means. So for an example, you'll see that one of the custom features is reject incoming calls. So no matter who's loaded on the list, it will reject all incoming calls, but the app will still work and so forth. So there is a few custom features that can be selected depending on the request. Okay, so that basically covers linking devices and how you would learn a remote on multiple devices or a tag on multiple devices, as well as how it would work if there's a master and slave device. Okay, we are now going back to our cell switch Infinity. And you'll see that if we go to general setup, there's a new thing called advanced settings, which will not be available on the intercom. Basically, the intercom will always be used for access control, but a cell switch can be used for much more than just access control. So if we go to advanced settings, or when you do register the device for the first time, it will ask you what you want to use that cell switch for. So for example, you'll see all the electric fences we are integrated with. And there are a lot of other options that you can choose. All this basically does is it sets up all the rest of the settings to a specific default for what you want to use it for. So if we go, for example, go to inputs and outputs, we'll see that input high message gate open, low message gate closed. If we go back to advanced settings and change this to, let's say, a energizer, save settings, it will now change all the settings to a default for an energizer. So nothing has to be done on your side. Another thing you can do is if you want to see what each setting does is if you hover over them, it will actually tell you what will happen if you choose that default setting. Okay, let's say we want to use this device. There's something a lot of people still get confused about, and that's the 8-in, 8-out expansion board. Basically, the expansion board can connect to the cell switch Infinity and any one of the intercom systems. And what it does, it gives you 8 extra inputs and 8 extra outputs. So how do we actually program those extra 8 inputs and extra 8 outputs? On the top here, you'll see enable 8-in, 8-out expansion board. Selecting this, a new setting will pop up on the left. Okay, so what we'll see here is exactly what we saw earlier. Input and output options for the cell switch is listed here. If we go back to this one, we'll see the input and output options for the expansion board. So input high message on the expansion board, the low message, and so forth. Very easy. This can be changed as needed. Now, if we go to output control commands, we had a look earlier at the app commands, and this works exactly the same way. So output 1 through till 8 is listed, and the command for each setting is also listed. So let's say, for an example, we want output 1 on the expansion board to pulse. We can see that the setting for pulse is IO pulse 1. Now, if we go back to our app buttons, and we want the entrance gate button to pulse output 1 on the expansion board, you go to settings, and you will see it will actually now be listed. So IO1 pulse. And then save. Now, if someone presses this button, it will pulse the output on the expansion board itself. Okay, now just moving on to the logs. It's the last thing about the portal we're going to cover. Very self-explanatory, really. Your access control log is the logs for all access gained on this device. So you'll see the name, mobile number, if they use a remote, if they made a call, they use the remote, if they use Bluetooth, if they use an OTP, everything will be listed here with a timestamp next to it. Okay, device status log. This is mostly for us to basically fault find, but it gives you some information like device name, number, signal strength, voltage, and current firmware. Okay, important to note our signal strength. Our signal strength width from 0 to 31, and anything below 20 will start giving you issues. That is with the old GSM devices. Like we said, with the LTE devices, we find that even with a low signal strength, they are much more stable than the old GSM devices. So, for example, let's say you've got an old dual SIM and the signal strength's on 14, your device will maybe be offline from 50% of the day. But LTE device, same signal strength with 14, will likely be online 99% of the day. So much more stable than the old GSM devices. Next, we've got our device IO log. And this is just also for us to fault find, to see exactly what's going on with our devices or with the device if it's offline. And yeah, it gives you some important information. So let's see, for example, that we just selected the expansion board on this device. Now you'll see that it says IO board not detected. That's because there's a tag reader connected to the cell switch and not a expansion board. So if you have any faults with your device, you're having a problem, the first place to look will be your device IO log. So that will tell you exactly what's happening to the device every minute. Or anytime something happens, it will be logged here. Okay, if there's ever an OTP or something that did not go through, first place to have a look is messaging log. So, for example, we can see we tried updating it, 1348, but it said there was no communication with that specific cell switch. Every time a notification goes through, every time, basically any notification or message that gets sent from that device will be listed here. For example, we can see that there was timers on this device yesterday, and it will send that message to this user from this device, and it will tell you it was delivered. Okay, device data log can be ignored completely. This is more for energizers, but it's not very important for general use. Okay, so we have covered most of the portal, and that's basically the everything there is about the settings of the device. So you'll see that it's very easy to change any setting on the device. There's something I might have missed. Let's give me a second. Something I want to cover as well is the admin profiles and how admins work. So we can see that currently on the left here, under share device, there's only one profile connected to this device, and that's the test account. So this test account, because it has been registered on this account, will be the owner of that said device. Basically, what this means is you'll see there are 3 roles: owners, admin, and access control. Owners can add more admin, and they can change all settings. Admins can change all settings, but they can't add more admin users. And access control can only add and remove users from the system, nothing else. So we can enter any email address here and then share that device with them. Basically, what this means is when they log onto their profile, this exact same device will show on their side as well. Okay. Another thing I have missed is how to get around when you want to use a remote and tags on the same system. Like we said, it's not possible to do it, but what you can, however, do is let's take the cell switch, go to advanced settings again, and now we want to use the cell switch for remotes, and we want to use the intercom for tags. So it will work exactly the same way as earlier. We select remotes for this specific device. If we now go to remote tags and keypads, you'll see the receivers enabled and the tag readers disabled. Okay. Now we're just going to link it again with our intercom. and then update the device. So basically how this works is the intercom will use the tags and the cell switch will use the remotes. So all remotes and tags will still have to be learned and controlled from the master device. So that means on your master device, you will have both tags and remotes. So it will still be a centralized place where you can handle all your tags and remotes. So for example, let's go back to our master device now. And we can see that this user already has a tag and it will work on the intercom. Now, if we select the second device as a tag or for the tag to work, it won't work because the specific cell switch doesn't have a tag reader now. It now uses remotes. So we don't have that option anymore. But we can now go to the remote section and we'll see that at the top, we now have a new gateway which says cell switch LTE. This just means it's now looking for the receiver on the cell switch. And when we quick learn that remote, it will learn it on the cell switch directly. It will then be listed at the bottom and it will ask you device to control. So remember, the intercom has a tag system, so it won't be able to use remotes. So we won't be able to select the intercom as a device to control for the remotes itself. It will only work on the cell switch. So typically what people do is they've got an intercom system at the gate and all the remotes get learned on the intercom, but they also want to use tag system. All you need to do is you have a second device, let's say a nano or a cell switch. You link that device to the intercom, and then you learn all your tags on your second device. And both gets connected to the gate motor. So, and then basically both remotes and tags will all be done from the master device only. Okay, so theoretically, you can have, let's say, 10 devices and one master device. Each device is connected to a laundry room, a swimming pool, a pedestrian gate, main gate, exit gate, but all your programming will still be done on the master device. If you go to your device list, all your devices will be listed here, but all settings only change on the master device. Okay, so very important to keep in mind. Okay, so we have covered the portal now. What we're going to cover next is the subscription part of devices. There are a few changes, but mostly it is still the same. Okay, important to note, all SIM cards we provide, like we said earlier, has voice over LTE already active. All subscriptions are free for the first year. Now, important to note with normal cell switches, a cell switch Infinity has a subscription of 419 Rand a year, excluding that, and then we load the airtime for you on that device. If you have a nano with less than 10 users, the subscription is 99 Rand a year, excluding that. If that cell switch nano, however, is connected to an energizer, the subscription will still be 419, excluding that a year. Okay, intercom systems. Intercom systems, important to note that the subscription on all intercom systems is 419, excluding VAT, except for the 2-button. If the 2-button intercom has less than 10 users on it, there's no subscription fee. If more than 10, it's all 419. So, important thing to note is that airtime still has to be loaded from your side. That is for the outgoing calls that's being made from the intercom itself. With the cell switch Infinity and the cell switch Nano, we load the airtime on those systems. With the intercoms, you still have to load your own airtime for the outgoing calls. Okay, a question we do get a lot is how much airtime does the system use, and that all depends on the specific complex. So if it's a very busy complex, obviously they're going to have a very much bigger bill than a smaller complex with less calls. Yeah, so free welcome SMSs are included with all of this, but it's just very important to note that a Intercom 2 button has no subscription fee if there's less than 10 people loaded, but still 419 excluding VAT a year with more than 10 people loaded. So a few things I just want to check in the chat. I see there are quite a few questions. Most of them have been answered. If you guys do have questions, now's the time to ask. I'll just go through them, and yeah, I'll show you what I can for the questions. I'm just going to start at the top quickly. Okay, so I see here someone asked, how do you choose between SMS and WhatsApp when you are sending an OTP? If we go back to this, you'll see that it will ask you on your app itself, send the invite using SMS or send it via WhatsApp. Okay, next question is what's the cost regarding OTPs? So there's no cost for the actual device installed. The cost is from the user itself. So if they choose to send that OTP through an SMS, it will take airtime from their own cell phone. If they choose WhatsApp, it will use data of their cell phone. Okay, there's a question, can you have different buttons for admin and users and so forth? Basically, yes, you can. So on the app itself, these buttons that you set up here is the buttons that's going to show for everyone downloading the app. If your app is connected to your admin account, so if you open the menu top left and then link your account with your app, you can click on the little envelope next to the device, and you'll see there's actually a lot more commands that you can send, or you can just send a custom command through the little envelope. Yeah, so admin definitely have a lot more buttons and a lot more things they can do with that specific device if their admin account's linked to their app. Okay, I see if a master device and an Infinity device is linked to each other and you save settings and update device, will it copy over all the data? So yes, it will. Basically, if two devices are linked to each other, you don't have to update each one individually. If you click on update on the master device, it will automatically update all other devices linked to it. Okay, next question is what distance is close proximity when that specific setting is selected? It's about 30 meters. Also depending on the range of the remotes, if you are using remotes. Are there any plans to use Wi-Fi devices in the future? Yes, there's definitely a lot going on in the development department, like cameras and stuff for intercoms and so forth. Nothing we can promise at the moment, but yes, there are definitely talks about Wi-Fi and things like that in the future. Okay, recently the welcome SMS is not being sent. Okay, so just please make sure that if you go to the system and then manage welcome SMS, that box needs to be ticked. Send welcome SMS when users are added. If this is not ticked and someone is added, they won't automatically receive that welcome SMS. And the only way to resend a welcome SMS is to select the user by manually and then sending it. But to send any message after the free welcome S will require SMS credits. SMS credits are used for people not using the app. So you've got an Energizer fence and they don't have the app installed. All notifications they receive will be a normal SMS. It will first start using your free 30 SMSs. After that, it will start using SMS credits. So if you have a client that says they are not receiving the SMSs anymore, please check the free SMS as well as SMS credits. And if you do need more credits, there is the option to purchase credits through PayFast. Okay, I see I have an MTN SIM card in my Infinity, but when I phone the MTN number, the gate won't open. Only the Vodacom number works. So there's a setting by default that when you phone the first number of one of the older dual SIMs, it will open the first output. And if you phone the second number, it will open the second output. That's by default. If you want, however, to have both Vodacom and MTN to open the same output, you can find that under configuration, input and output options, and then output options. So on the older devices, this is a new device, so it won't be displayed, but the same message that you see here will be displayed here. And you can then select when a missed call is received on SIM 2, output 1, 2, or 3 will trigger. So just check that. Okay, so I see with the proximity setting, what does it use to determine this? Does it use the phone's location? And that's correct, yes. So when you do install the app for the first time and the device your number has been loaded on is a Bluetooth device, it will actually ask you to use your location. And that's one of the settings that you allow. You can, however, change this in your settings to only allow when the app is opened. So basically, it will just check if you are in range with your Bluetooth. If not, it won't open the gate. Okay, guys, so that's most of everything that we have covered. Is there anyone still have questions? Please feel free to ask now. We will, if you are interested, please send us an email afterwards. We can send you this recording, and we can also send you some pamphlet on all other devices and so on. So just pop us an email to support@accentronix.co.za. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it on for 5 more minutes just to see if there's any more questions. I'll just post the email address in the chat as well. Okay, guys, so thanks a lot for joining this meeting. Like I said, you are more than welcome to ask questions in the next 5 minutes. We will stay online. And yeah, if you would like us to send you the recording of this, just post your email address in the chat as well. Okay, this question, will the recording be on YouTube? We definitely plan to put it on YouTube, yes. Also, please feel free to WhatsApp us on our technical WhatsApp line or give our office a call if you have any other questions or you need help with any one of your devices. Have Infinity Cell Switch LTE device when missed call received, open output 1, pedestrian gate open instead of output 2, main car gate. So with our LTE devices, there is not the option to basically choose which output will trigger when you phone the SIM card. So with the LTE devices, it will always be output 1 that will trigger when you phone that device. However, you can set up output 2 or output 3 if you have a intercom system that can be opened with the app. How to default the device back to inactive. There was always the option to basically delete a device completely from the system, but too many people did this by accident, so we removed it. The best way is just send us an email to support asking us to remove that device for you. Purchasing airtime for a device done on the app or via cell phone provider app. So to purchase airtime for the system, the best way is to use your banking app, and then you use the SIM1 number of the device you want to load airtime for. Please do keep in mind, however, that the airtime will be available immediately on that SIM card, but it will only reflect after about 3 hours on our portal. What you can do is, I'll just post it on the chat as well. If you want to check the current airtime live, that's an SMS that you can send to the SIM card that you just loaded airtime on. So it's 1234.airtime, and it should reply with the current amount of airtime. Okay, anything else you guys want to know? We do plan on doing these training sessions and covering more in depth about certain topics every Friday. So yeah, we will definitely keep you posted on WhatsApp if there's another planned training session and also what it will cover. This one covered the main differences between GSM and LTE units, as well as a bit more detail about linking devices and having tags or remotes working on both of them. Also, please note that all intercom systems, if you do have a GSM 1000 installed, this can be checked on your device list. For example, you'll see the name of your device. Underneath, you will see what model it is. So the older dual SIM will say Intercom Infinity. The new one will say Intercom Infinity LTE. And the much older one will say GSM 1000. Note that you can upgrade your GSM 1000 as well as your your Intercom Infinity to the LTE model, where the intercom gets sent to our office, and then we replace the PCB. For quotes on that, please contact your installer and they should be able to assist. On that note, please note that you cannot upgrade any cell switches. Cell switches will have to be replaced. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining this session. Like we said, we will notify you if there are any future training sessions. We are still going to stay online for a few minutes while we take down everyone's email who would like the recording. So you guys are still free to ask some questions in the chat and we will answer them. But yes, guys, thanks for joining the meeting and I hope you all enjoy your weekend. Okay, I see there's a question with the cell switch. Can you have two cell phones loaded on a user profile? Can you please explain what you mean with that question? Okay, so for example, on an exit gate, to call the gate to open, can two separate phone numbers be used to perform that action? Okay, there's a few ways I'm thinking that it was asked. Let's cover the first one. If two people phone the gate at the same time, that cannot be done. No, it can only do the one at a time. But likely they are also going to be, the one car is going to be at the front, one at the back, both trying to call, and it will open eventually. For example, the two separate phone can use the phone, perform that action. If you mean, can you have more than one person on the access controllers? Yes. But if you do mean, do you have two numbers that you can call to open the gate? With the LTE devices, there's only single SIM. With the old one, it's two SIMs, and you can set up the second SIM to be a backup for the first one. Okay, and then I see there's, can you connect the second control panel to the first one? Can you please explain a bit more? Okay, will we have instances where we call and goes to voicemail? Yes, so there are likely two possibilities that can happen if you call the gate and it goes to voicemail. First and foremost, that's most likely the problem is signal. Device does not have enough signal, so the call can't go through. And the second one is power, to check the power on the device. If it has no power, it will also go to voicemail. So voicemail will likely happen on load shedding if the towers loses their GSM 2G network frequency. The device will likely go to voicemail, yes. If it does have a backup battery, remote and tags, or the Bluetooth should still work if it's an LTE unit. Okay, yes, I see. We have need for a panel during the day outside the office, but at night we need a panel inside the office for the noise. So yes, you can have multiple of them connected to it. If you are talking about panel, meaning the intercom, intercoms can also be linked to each other. So on the intercom, for example, let's say you've got two intercoms linked to one another, and you have a person loaded on the master device, and his button number is 99. Will be exactly the same on the second device. 99 will also call that person. Okay, so there's still one more question. Why do we have 2 green dots on the status, but there's only 1 SIM? Okay, so basically the way this 2 green LEDs work, let's call them that. So you'll see both are green. It just means the device is currently online. Let's say we change a setting on the intercom, but we don't click on update device. So for example, let's remove this user. But now we don't save settings and we don't update the new information. If we go back to the device list, you'll now see that if we so let's say we save settings, but we don't update the device. That means the settings took place on that specific device, but was not synced with our server. You'll see that the 1 will turn red. This means that some setting was changed, but the device has not updated since that setting has been changed. If both of them are red, it just means that device is offline. So it's basically nothing to do with the SIM card, where the one is SIM1 and the other one SIM2. It's just 2 status indicators. If the one on the right's red, means the device was offline. If this one's red, it means a setting was changed, but the device was never updated. So let's say, for example, you load a new number. That number was saved, but never updated. This will be red, and that new number won't be able to phone open the gate until you do update. But like I said earlier, after about 15 minutes, the device should automatically update.